My name is Benjamin Hellings, and I am the Jackson Tomasco Associate Curator of Numismatics and Department Head at the Yale University Art Gallery. It is my pleasure to share a closer look at the Naseby Cup, which is one of my favorite numismatic objects in any collection. The silver Naseby Cup, produced in 1839, stands over 2 feet tall and features 72 coins, medals, badges, and counters from the English Civil War period of the mid-17th century. It was made to commemorate the Battle of Naseby in Northamptonshire, England. Fought on June 14, 1645, the battle was the climax and decisive confrontation of the First English Civil War, which was fought between Parliament and King Charles I over issues of political governance and religious freedom. Studying the cup's craftsmanship allows us to consider the historical events of that time while appreciating its related numismatic pieces. The cup comprises a high number of numismatic pieces, coins, medals, badges, and counters, many of which are extremely rare. While some other Victorian-era decorative silver objects feature numismatic pieces, those that do tend to only have a single or few coins or medals. They also typically have the coins melded to the exterior of the object, thus obscuring one side of the piece. The Naseby cup, however, was smithed in a manner that allows one to view both sides of each numismatic piece, one side on the exterior of the cup and the other on the interior. The process for integrating the numismatic objects into the cup required numerous careful steps. After the cup was smithed, silversmiths Charles Riley and George Storer made a hole for each numismatic object. To ensure that the objects would fit and stay in place, a small bezel-like frame was created for each one. The object, once placed in its frame, was then inserted into the hole. The addition of a frame enabled the smiths to have a good grip for soldering the object into the cup. This process left behind visible traces on the inside of the cup, as can be seen through the remnants of sweating during the process, obscuring part of the coin. We can safely assume that a deliberate decision was made regarding which side of each piece, the obverse or reverse, would be displayed on the cup's exterior. It is not always clear how these decisions were made, although some objects were intentionally paired. One of the most interesting examples is located on the lid. Here we can see a heart-shaped locket of King Charles II and his wife, Queen Catherine of Braganza of Portugal. The locket is an imitation of a marriage badge celebrating the union between the two, and it was sliced in half so that both sides could be displayed as they were set in the lid across from one another. The lid of a Naseby cup is topped by a small, unrefined Britannia figure. Juxtaposed with an ornate silver vessel, this figure may initially seem out of place. Yet its inclusion is justified since it was actually recovered from the Naseby battlefield, adding historical significance to the Naseby cup as a whole. The Britannia figure, which has lost its original trident, appears to have been originally part of some other object, or possibly it was a standalone object, which we can deduce because it stands on an uneven molded base. Some of the coins and medals on the Naseby cup have a more distant connection to the battlefield than the Britannia figure. The letters NE on this coin unambiguously informs us that this coin is a New England shilling from the Massachusetts Bay Colony. This makes it possibly one of the most far-fetched pieces on the silver cup. However, a connection between the English Civil War and the New England shilling from Boston does exist. The coin may have been incorporated as a reference to the war's impact beyond the British Isles. Most of the English colonists in America had departed England only a decade or two at most before the outbreak of the war, and they were still dependent on England for their survival. They were also still in the process of establishing their own institutions, confronting many of the same economic, political, religious, and social issues as their English counterparts, where the English Civil War was being fought to address some of these. As a product of a Massachusetts Bay Colony, the shilling also had relevant religious connotations. The colony was settled by Puritans, many of whom backed their Puritan brethren in the British Isles against Charles I. The pastor Hugh Peter in Salem, for example, returned to England in 1641 as an agent for Massachusetts and became chaplain to Cromwell's New Model Army. Given Cromwell's own Puritan background, the inclusion of a shilling on the cup may have commemorated some colonists' support of a parliamentarian cause. The precise reason for the New England shilling's inclusion in the cup may never be known. Despite being geographically distant from the battles across the Atlantic, the colonies were entrenched in the turmoil of the English Civil War. All the numismatic pieces were carefully selected for inclusion, for their ability to tell a story and their historical significance, some of which we have uncovered today.